Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. My email address is jason@sportspectrum.com, jason@sportspectrum.com. Love to hear from you. Hear any thoughts you have on today's show with Ricardo and Grace Allen, or any feedback or maybe some ideas for future guests, you can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. We are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust, their advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. Check them out at ronblue.com, ronblue.com. Today on the show, we welcome a husband and wife duo, Ricardo Allen, who is a defensive back with the Atlanta Falcons, and his wife Grace join us here today on Sports Spectrum. Ricardo played his college ball at Purdue, was an NFC champion in 2016 when the Atlanta Falcons went all the way to Super Bowl 51. He was selected in the fifth round of the 2014 NFL Draft, pick number 147. He signed a 3-year contract extension in August of 2018, and then that same season tore his Achilles in Week 3 and missed the rest of the season. He returned in 2019 and was named the Atlanta Falcons representative for the 2019 Walter Payton Man of the Year. Ricardo and Grace have been together a while. They have a really great story, and now they have a podcast that they've been putting together called All In with the Allens. You can check it out everywhere podcasts are found. And we caught up with them literally a week or two before Grace was about to give birth to her child. And so she's very pregnant here. And since then, obviously, she's had her baby. And it's very exciting to see Ricardo and Grace have their family grow to a family of 5 in what was a family of 4 when we taped this interview. Ricardo and Grace Allen are our guests here on Sports Spectrum. Enjoy the conversation right here on the show. Pleased to be joined here on Sports Spectrum by Ricardo and Grace Allen. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So glad to have you here, and we're kind of turning the tables. You guys have a brand new podcast that you've been hosting. I love it. It's called All In with the Allens, and the podcast more something that you guys started together. So I think we'll start there, and why you started a podcast and why you wanted to become a part of this show. Grace, we'll start with you.
So podcasting has always been something that's been in the back of my mind, something that has grown to be quite a part of my life as far as being a listener, just having young children and being on the go. I found that I was listening to a lot of knowledge in other people's shows while I was folding laundry or before the world shut down, driving in the car. You know, I always used it as a way to learn. I love to read and I love to write, but life gets busy and you find yourself more on the go. So being able to really sit down and read a book or to write and share in that way, I love to share knowledge and to connect with people. So I brought it up to Rico probably about a year ago. And I said, this is something that I really think that I want to do. You know, I would love for you to be a part of it with me as much or as little as you want to. His life is so busy with football and all that he has. So I never wanted it to be like overbearing or like, oh, you have to join me. I was okay with it being just me. I was hopeful that he would want to join because he brings such an awesome dynamic and like so much to the table. But I was excited when he wanted to be a part of it too.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it was always good because, you know, I always know that Gracie wanted to do something. You know, she went to school. You know, Gracie has her master's and stuff like that. And, you know, she's always wanted to be, you know, she always think that she wanted to be like one of the independent ones still. So, you know, Gracie has always, you know, strive to, you know, push and do something. So I wanted to take some time, you know, in the off season, you know, this year to do something with her and do something together. And, you know,
it's been fun.
With her brain and, you know, with, you know, my work ethic, I always wanted to see, you know, how we would blend together because we do blend together in a marriage, but we never worked on like a big project or never taken all the things that we do talk about, you know, that we do sit around and learn and work together on all the time in our minds, but we never have done a project
We've never
together.
publicly put it out there. Like if you're friends with us and you come over for dinner, you know that this is the conversation, this is the dynamic between us. But for people that are following him on Instagram or following me on Instagram, you only get such a small,
glimpse of,
a small glimpse of our life. And like Rico mentioned, we do come from two totally different walks of life. Like on paper, we would look like the most incompatible people ever, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But we really do bounce off each other. And like the two of us together, we can bring a lot to the table. So it was cool that we were willing, I feel, as a couple, and that he was willing and able to support me in this venture. And it's been really cool just to see what it's already become. And even just to look back, it's only been we released it April 11th of this year, which was our 5-year wedding anniversary. So we did that kind of as like a gift to ourselves. Yeah. So it's only been not even a month yet.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's doing really well.
And it's done. We never really talked about
we never had we didn't even have expectations for it.
We had no expectations at all. We were if 5 people listen and it's like our parents, hey, cool. Thank you. It's something fun, but it's been really well received, which is super cool.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's perfect timing too, because the podcast industry, if you want to call it that, is booming. And we're examples of that here on Sports Spectrum. We just see that there are a lot of people out there that are listening and consuming content through podcasts. The second is it's a quarantine. It's a pandemic. Not that we're planning on that. And hopefully we never have one again in our lifetime because of the way the world is turned upside down. But it allows you to kind of take advantage of an opportunity when you're home all the time to venture into something like this. Ricardo, how's that been for you kind of in this podcast world and turning instead of being in front of people, in front of, the mic and people being asking you questions like I am, to kind of turn it around a little bit and help co-host a podcast? I know the most recent one I saw and listened to was you interviewing another person. So that means you're doing the interviewing. What's this been like?
Yeah, it's been really cool. You never realize how hard it actually is to because sometimes, you got to get a conversation going, you got to get it rolling. So you never really realize. And then you also don't want to, you don't know sometimes what offends people and what doesn't offend people, what to ask and what not to ask. So it's kind of just trying to figure out this whole different dynamic. And then once you're hosting stuff, you never realize how good of speakers and talkers and how fluent, how good they are with their words. And it's just cause sometimes I get stuck and I'm just man, the people who are always on live, people who, who never really edit stuff, who just keep going and things that's tough.
That's a skill.
Yeah, it is. It is a skill.
That's definitely a skill.
And you never know until you get into the area. Right. And I've liked it a lot. I've always been, a pretty private guy, in my career, because I just like I like being a football player on Sundays, and then, outside of it, I like being living, a
normal civilian. He likes to go to the grocery store and do our grocery shopping. He likes to go to dinner with his wife.
I try to do as much normal stuff as I can without being bombarded. And I don't have that, which is a blessing, know? So I kind of get the best of both worlds. And, opening up to a podcast, you kind of open up to, other people's opinions and stuff like that. But I'm used to it. I've been in the biggest stages in the world. I've won big games and I've lost the biggest game, So it's I understand, what this world has to offer. And, this is something I want to do to later on with my babies, want to listen and, it's just something that's just more to just writing on a piece of paper than, my babies being able to really go later on and listen to my voice and me help guide them through some of the stuff they may be having trouble with. And
maybe that they don't even feel comfortable coming to you about at that specific point in time. We have no idea where this will take us down the road or what it could become. So it's just been super cool
it was cool. It was an aspect of the podcast that we never even thought of. And it was one of my, CPA's friend, and he, got in contact with us and he was telling us how this helped, him and his marriage. And,
it opened up conversation. They've been married for so many years, and it was they listened to something we were talking about on the show, and it inspired them to have a conversation about something that they had never talked about before.
It just gave them a spark in their marriage.
And it was really cool because you don't necessarily think about reaching that cohort of people, or that a couple that's been together 9 years, married 5, we don't have it all figured out. So to think that we could have a conversation and it could reach somebody that's been doing this so much longer than us, like that's really, really neat.
Yeah, I've always said if you have a story to tell and you know that it can influence or impact one person, then we should tell it. And then if it impacts one, that impacts 500, that impacts 5 million, great. But if you know it can impact the one, you tell it. I love how you guys are doing this with the podcast. Again, it's called All In with the Allens. It's available everywhere podcasts are found. Go and subscribe, download, listen, and let them know that you heard their podcast. It's a pretty good one. Ricardo and Grace Allen.
So much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of my job here is to help guys. So Ricardo and Grace Allen are joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Ricardo, I want to ask you, we just watched a very unique NFL draft a couple of weeks ago. I guess it'll be a couple months or however many long ago it will be when people listen here back in April. You were a 5th round pick, number 147. I wanted to just start there and then we'll kind of get into your guys' journey and your relationship on that day, your draft day. What do you remember about that day?
It was like I think I heard it best. It was like watching someone fill a bathtub, drip by drip. So, so it's kind of like, because once you get down into that 3rd day, it's the last day. And you ain't get a call in the first 2 days, so you don't feel very optimistic. Mm-hmm. So, at first, I was trying to stay as optimistic as the 4th round came around. And then when the 4th round went around, and I remember my DB coach from college, was working with the Dolphins at the time. And, when that came by, and I was like, okay. I was like, here we go. I'm about to go to the Dolphins. Like, I know. Like 5th round draft pick. They told me I might can go in the 5th. Okay. And then I didn't get drafted. And I was like, oh.
Or you didn't get called by them.
Yeah, I didn't get called by them. And then, I was actually going to get up and go and go bowling because we did like the night before. Just something I was just going to try to get my mind off, just in case like it really didn't happen. I didn't want to just sit there and watch the whole draft. Sure. And right when I was about to get up, I remember I saw the Falcons at 147, and I remember that was a team that it was the only team through the whole combine and everything that worked me out. After our pro day. So I was like, maybe this is get a chance. So I sat back down and, the phone ended up ringing. I thought it was somebody messing with me, but it ended up being them, man. We've been here ever since.
No, that's good. What do you remember about that day, Grace?
Oh my gosh. It was.
Were you more nervous than him?
I don't know. I think that we did a really good job of like taking turns being nervous, to be honest. I think when I noticed that he was kind of getting down on himself or like starting to fear, then it was like I had to pull myself out of my nerves and fear and be there to encourage him. And I think we kind of did that like pendulum as we still do in our life today. I think that's been a pretty consistent trend for us. But I just remember, so I think the draft started on a Thursday. So like Thursday, we knew it was round 1. That wasn't going to happen. Friday, you're a little bit like, maybe something really crazy could happen. We could get called on day 2.
I hope I'm that guy.
So you have like the wind in your sails that like, maybe you're actually going to do better than they tell you you're going to, right? So you have like that little bit of hope. And then that night comes around, the phone doesn't ring. And I think that's when the reality starts to set in. Like tomorrow's the last day.
Yeah.
And we were down at his mom's house in Florida. My family came as well. And that night we went bowling with like some of his high school friends just to get out of the house. Cause like you said, you watch a bathtub fill drip by drip. Like it's just monotonous and it feels like it's never going to end. Yeah. And so that night we were driving home and I just remember him saying like, I don't know. And I was like, well, nobody does, but this is just the starting line. And whether we get a phone call tomorrow or not, this doesn't dictate everything moving forward. Like, yes, it's a big deal. I'm not going to downplay that. And I want this to happen for you. But like, if it doesn't, you've overcome far bigger things in your life that like, this will just be another one of those stories. Mm-hmm. But then as soon as we got home, I was like, I'm going to go for a drive. And I just went and I drove to the ocean. He fell asleep and I just sat there. And I remember I just really openly, I just started praying out loud because I didn't want to express my fears to anybody else or to him. And I just remember saying like, you know, God, even if this isn't a part of like my story moving forward, or if we're not going, because we weren't engaged at this point, we had been dating a couple years. I was like, just let this happen for him. Like he had overcome so many things in his life, and he had always been somebody's 5th round pick, to put it very simply. Like he was never a priority when it came to sports or a lot of things in his life. And I just remember, you know, I just closed my eyes and I prayed, and I went back home that night, and the next day, you know, the day's going on. And so when the phone call actually happened, it was surreal. I mean, it's still one of those moments that like I talk about now and I get chills, because you watch it happen for everybody else, but when it actually is happening for someone that you love, and you have seen, like, you know, granted, we didn't go to high school together, we met in college, but when you see all the little things that a lot of people don't get to see along the way, and each step of the day, and all of the sacrifice it takes, and then you see something like this happen, it was just, like I said, I get chills still thinking about it, because it was the beginning of a dream coming true.
Yeah, it turned out okay for you, Ricardo. You're having a pretty nice NFL career here. Obviously, some highs and lows, and we'll get to those in a second. But I want to ask you guys about your faith. You alluded to it, Grace, with praying and prayer. Your faith's important to you. This show is the intersection of sports and faith with Sports Spectrum. Ricardo, why don't you start and kind of share the importance of faith from your perspective, and then also together as a couple, and why that's important?
Yeah, it was, you know, growing up, like my family wasn't like big in the church or anything. Like we never really went to church, or, you know, I actually like, you know, used to go with a couple friends, you know, it's like I used to go like other friends' families, like if I wanted to go to church, to just kind of like see, you know, what it was about, you know. And it was like every time I went, I never had like a bad experience. So I was always wondering, like, why don't we do this more? And, you know, it was always cool, because like my path with faith was, you know, never pressed on me. Like my path with faith, you know, was always, you know, my own, you know, will to go and try to find, and try to figure out like, what is this, you know, bigger purpose? Because one thing I've always known, you know, my whole life was, you know, there is, you know, someone, you know, working for me. There is someone, you know, that has their hand on me, that's always, you know, been watching over me, because the path that I come from, you can't make it through without, you know, it ain't a way you can tell me that
there's not.
Yeah. You couldn't have put this together if you wrote it yourself, right?
Like you can't convince me no other way, because I just know. Like, and then it was always cool, because when I met Grace, and I kind of always told her about, like, you know, my path with, you know, trying to figure out, you know, my faith, and trying to find my faith, and trying to find, you know, God, myself. You know, it was a tough path along the way, because like the neighborhood I come from, you know, the people, you know, who ran the church houses wasn't, you know, the best people, and it
was corrupt. Almost,
you know? they didn't do the right
hard
thing.
To trust.
So, you know, I know that's kind of why my mom stayed away from him, because it was like the person right down the street who was like the main person. And then it was, you know, that wasn't like the best for us. And then when I met Gracie, and I always, you know, told her, you know, how, you know, trying to figure stuff out, we actually ended up going to a church down in Indiana together.
Yeah.
To like try to like, you know, get baptized, and to try to like, you know, figure out and try, you know, to make our way, you know, towards that. And they told us that they don't think we know enough to actually be there.
It was really interesting.
So
wow.
Yeah, heavy. Like so, here we are, like, you know, 2 kids. We've been trying to figure this out on our whole lives, you know, and we've been dating now for about a year. The draft, all this stuff is happening in our lives, and we were going to church together consistently. Yep. And we were like, let's do this. Like, let's get baptized separately, obviously, but like, let's make this commitment to ourselves. And when we approached this, you know, a church in Indiana, and I'll never forget, they gave us this like pamphlet and then told us like, maybe come back when you like know a little bit more, you're sure. And now knowing what I know, like in that moment, I knew that was not right.
Yeah. Right.
But now knowing what I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine.
It's so different.
It's so different. And even like coming to PAO and how everything is like, your arms are open and people are getting baptized and it's a celebration. And like, We got baptized at PAO. We did it together. And I think if we hadn't have been like turned away that time before, it obviously would have been special. But for us, it was almost like it wouldn't have been as special to be so embraced and supported as we were, knowing that there are some places in the world that you could be told, like, you don't know enough.
Yeah. And
that has to be so tough. I mean, I'm shaking my head. I'm almost really angry to hear that there are churches like that, because I read in scripture. I'm reading in Acts right now. We're going through the book of Acts, and the book of Acts is the early church, right? And it's in Acts 2 where they're asking, how can I be saved? And Peter stands up there and he says, repent and be baptized. It doesn't say repent, spend 6 months going to ministry, learning about who Jesus is, and then come back and be baptized. It doesn't say that.
No. Yeah. So we were really caught off guard by that. And I think too, in that moment, it was a test for us individually, because like Rico mentioned, so much of why he didn't get to experience a relationship with God when he was a young boy and in his family is because of the system being corrupt, or people not being able to trust. So here he is trying to come back to it yet again, getting told you don't know enough. And then here I am my whole life thinking that religion is a set of rules and it's like these things you have to do. And to be told that, I was like, wow, but you know what? Both of us knew in our hearts that wasn't the truth. And we never stopped slugging at it. And so it's like, now when people come to me and they're like, tell me about your faith, I'm like, let me tell you something. Yeah. It is so much more a relationship than it is a religion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is the foundation, and that is the basis of it for me. And I would say that's the foundation and the basis of it for him and for us together. Like,
you would think that it's like, I forget the name of the book, but it was one of the first books, I think my chaplain for the team, Jason Webster, who was the
he
one
married
who
us actually,
who baptized us at PAO and sponsored us to go to PAO. And he was, one of the first people to actually ever, teach me what I actually knew. I knew deep down inside, but he was the one who actually showed me,
he explained the gospel to you.
And not only did he explain it, but he was probably one of the first people, I don't want to speak for you, that lived it.
Yeah, that's huge.
And so to see him in his marriage and in his role as a father of 5 children, and to balance all the things he's balanced, and to still want to lead young men that may be with the team for 6 weeks and then never meet them again. Like, the fact that was still in his heart. Not only did he...
Who also was a professional athlete who also had...
He had every reason to not have to do it.
Yeah, so it's like he had to get the same urges that most, men in the world get, just as being a professional athlete, and he still, his whole life has shown us to do it the right way. And,
and he's been honest. Yeah. He's honest about all of it, which I think is another thing that sometimes it's hard to trust, because there's so many things that you don't want to talk about them. You don't want to go there. But when someone's willing to lead with that honesty of it's just, you want that even more for yourself, and you want to give that gift to others.
Absolutely.
That's what he did for us in PAO. I mean, we've been so fortunate.
Yeah.
We'll get back to our conversation with Ricardo and Grace Allen here on Sports Spectrum in just a little bit, but want to tell you about our sponsors, Ronald Blue Trust. Their company's certified financial planning professionals offer comprehensive financial planning and investment management services based on biblical principles to individuals and families across the U.S. who are beyond the debt problem stage but want to be good stewards of their wealth. I know this time of year, in the middle of a pandemic, which we're coming out of, but still, COVID-19 is there, and it's done a damage to certainly the economy and to a lot of people. And we have questions regarding our finances. Ronald Blue Trust is the perfect place to ask those questions and see if they're a fit to work with in terms of your financial planning needs. Check them out again at ronblue.com. That's the website, ronblue.com. Now back to our conversation with Ricardo and Grace Allen, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Ricardo, I want to ask you, that faith, it's the funny joke that when you accept Christ into your life and you begin to walk with the Lord, that everything's going to be great. And obviously we know that's not the case. And in 2018, saw the hills and valleys of being a pro football player for you, right? So you sign a 3-year extension and God is good and everything's great and you get that new contract and then you tear your Achilles.
Yeah.
and from the hill to the valley. And it's like, what just happened? Can you tell me about what you learned going through that trial, Gracie? You can kind of fill in some dots there too about what you learned going through that, especially within your walk with Christ and trying to grow in that as well.
Yeah, that right there was like one of the that was my chance to prove it to not just, everybody on the outside, but to prove it to myself and to talk, with God, myself of, like if, I've always been, a person who, is always, open and, just try to help people and try to inspire people. So like, that was my first time going through something as big as tearing my Achilles and, being, football being taken away from me. Yeah, like I just got, the blessing to, secure my family forever, and that was something I was able to write off, to check off, my goals list. And then, I get something. So it's like I hit, two different highs. I hit, the high of, hitting my contract. Oh, well, I hit the, the opposite of a high, which is a low of, tearing my Achilles, which is another extreme. So it's like, I just had to, I had to dig down deep inside. And, that's when you really have to like talk to yourself. You have to talk with God and you have to, figure out what he put you on this earth for and figure out that, sometimes it's more than just, being a football player, because sometimes I was just, at that point in time, I was just so locked into football. Football was all I really known. And when, it was taken out of my life, for that year, it was crazy just all the things, that my eyes was open to like, being, more of a student and being like I read much more, me, I'm actually on my journey to, read the whole Bible. So, I'm still going through that actually right now. So like, just, me being able to sit back from, the Achilles, has gotten me into reading books. And then, like I've always, I know much more about the Bible now, me reading through it, than I ever even thought that I knew. So me reading other books and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, like since you're good enough to read other books, now is your time to, you always
read the book. Really sit down and read it.
If you want to do that, now you got to really sit down and read the main book.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to just to really, and I think I've done well. Like I fought through, I got back to the field. Life was just slowed down a little bit, and I realized that we always talk about life, when things like that, those are not problems. Those are inconveniences,
Right.
Those are just, it was just a small inconvenience for a year, that a little bump in the road, and we got back to grooving.
Yeah.
Gracie, let me ask you real quick. I'm sorry, because I watched this piece recently on ESPN. I don't know if you guys saw it, on Alex Smith, and it was powerful because Alex Smith, the quarterback with the Chiefs, and had with the Redskins now, and really gruesome leg injury that just got worse and worse as he was trying to figure out what was wrong and then recovering from it. But we watched his wife in this feature and how prominent she was in being, support for him. And then you remember they got young kids just like you guys do. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, how you were able to kind of handle this, I guess, from a wife's perspective, from a partner perspective, but also questioning God, like, what are you doing here, God? Why is this happening to my husband, who I care about and love very much? What was that experience like for you?
That's a really good question. And I think it's kind of like I touched on earlier, that it's that pendulum of life. It's like, there's yet to be a season, I think, where we're both like on the high together. We're both like on the low together. And I think that's one of the big reasons God made marriage, is to have that person that can be that, be that pendulum and be that force for you when you can't necessarily do it yourself. And I'll never forget, I will say this, I don't watch football games the same way that I used to. I'm nervous from the time the game begins until it ends. And that's something that I'm working through. And that's something that I feel has been taken away from me, that I wasn't ready for that element of reality to really hit me over the head of like, of course I knew injuries happen. You see it happen, but when it's something that happens in your home, just like with anything else, I think sometimes it takes it being that close to home for the reality to really strike. So I'll never forget seeing him stay down on the field. That's when I knew, like, okay, this is definitely something.
Yeah.
The cart to come out. And I was scared. I was nervous. I didn't know what it was. But what I did know was that we were going to get through it, regardless of what it was. So it was interesting moving forward with the surgeries. And our daughter was only, I think, 9, almost 10 months old at that point when it happened. So she was little. Our first 2 are 19 months apart. So like we had just over 2-year-old and then almost a 1-year-old. It was just like, and it was a lot, but it was one of those seasons of life that the days feel long, but I look back on it and I like almost don't even remember what it felt like living through that. But I remember what it felt like because he was on a scooter, couldn't even bathe himself. You're like, you can't bear any weight. So somehow we got through it. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, okay, whatever it is that is needed of me, like, God, just give me the strength to be that. Because there were some days that I wasn't sure how I was going to do it all, but I did, like I said, and here we are, we're looking back and I'm like, I don't really remember, but like, I know that it was tough and I know that we got through it, but I was worried. Yeah. I was worried about Rico, just because you hear from so many people once football is taken away that it's just a downward spiral with their life. Because for so long, your identity is you play football. Yep. And
that's all you do. When you're trying to be able to get drafted, you kind of have to devote.
That has to be your whole life.
Yeah, you have to devote like everything you have within, the sport. Because if you want to get something out of it, you got to put all you can.
And from an effort perspective, I 100% agree with that. Like you can't achieve what these guys do without giving 100%. But where it got a little scary for me is if that's your whole identity, that's different. Yeah. I was so encouraged watching him walk through that season of his life. Like I think what you were trying to say earlier is like, it was the first time in your life you had to really see if you practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to encourage other people when they're going through hard stuff, but when that switches it and it's on you, it's like, okay, what do I really believe? Mm-hmm. And so for both of us, I think that was another one of those seasons where it's like, okay, what do we actually believe? Yeah. Because it's easy when you're afraid. It's easy when you're in the valley. It's easy when you're not distracted and the days are slow and you're not on the field. It's easy to slip into all those worldly thoughts and, oh, it would be understandable if we felt sorry for ourselves, or, oh, it would be understandable, but like, that's not what we're called to do. Mm-hmm. So every day it was just a matter of trying to encourage one another and walk through that.
Yeah.
Ricardo, the wives, they're the real MVPs here, aren't they?
Oh yeah, always. They do all the work.
No,
actually,
this is not. Yeah. Thank you.
They do all the work.
I'm working on being better with taking compliments, so I appreciate that. Yeah. But it's definitely a dual effort.
No, I just mean because I'm a guy that's been married 20 years, and I mean I'm on a thank you. I'm on a much different situation than you're in, obviously, with my career, but. Where would we be without our wives was kind of where I was going with that, Ricardo, because there's a stigma too, not just in the NFL, but in the country on marriage, right? And its importance. So brag on your wife a little bit.
Oh man, this is my sweet thing. She do everything, man. I don't know. It's like, I don't know what I would do. Like, I don't know. Like, that's the thing is, I tell her all the time. We talk about this all the time because I tell her, like, I don't know, like, where I would be. She always she think I still will be successful.
Definitely.
But I don't know if I would be, as polished as a human being. Like, I don't think I would be, I don't know if I would be as good with, my finances right now. I don't know if I would be, I don't know if I would be as good with my health. I don't know if I would be eating the right things. I don't know if I would be, reading. I don't know if I would be, just going to sleep on time. So, like, just so many things that, she, is because it's not all that, like, what she do for me, just in the sense of, how she can, fix me dinner or, get my stuff packed because I'm terrible at packing. It's, it's really like how she challenged me, how she sharpened me all the time. And, because she do allow me to make all my decisions and make, most of the decisions because I have to make a lot of decisions as being, a young professional. But she not afraid to check me, and that's the thing is like.
We hold each other accountable.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
You know?
Absolutely. That's what makes a good marriage. Trust me.
Sometimes you're like, man, I really could have been okay not hearing that, but you never look back a week later when your feelings aren't hurt anymore and think, All right. Well, that was definitely a conversation that needed to be had. We're much better for it. But in the moment, it's. Yeah, thank you.
And it's just like, I got my youngins. My pride and joy is my babies. And, I think the person that you choose to, raise your kids with is because you with them forever. You with them forever, and you with them, your wife forever. So the person that you choose to do it with, you gotta hope you can get it right once, At least that's what I'm going for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's the goal.
Absolutely. Ricardo and Grace Allen are joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Last couple questions on the show with these two awesome people. Let me go and ask you one football question that maybe you've been asked this a million times, maybe you haven't. But I'm always fascinated. You obviously were part of the Falcons team that made it to the Super Bowl, and we're not going to talk about the game because we don't need to talk about the game. Maybe you're okay with talking about it. But I'm more focused on the idea of the people who have experienced, from a football perspective, again, a tough loss, right? And I've talked to some people that said I would rather have never played that game than lose. For you, would you have rather never played in a Super Bowl or played in maybe you'll play in another one. Hopefully you'll get a championship in a lot of years. But you see where I'm going here. Would you rather have never played in it or gone through what you went through in playing in that game?
Yes, see, me, I think that I learn from every loss that I have, and that's just not in football terms. That's like, I believe in, failure is one of the best teachers of life. So,
agree.
That game right there, that game to me, I want to be an offensive coordinator. I want to be a head coach. I want to be, I played defense my whole life. I understand the ins and outs what defense does. So I want to go against us. Like the game is built for offense, so I'm going on their side. So when I'm done, but that game has taught me, and that game is something that I can pass down to my kids because I don't want to have to watch that game, but I can show that game and say, this game right here will show, because if you would have asked me in the fourth quarter, were we going to win that game? I would bet everything that, I have. And I'm not a gambling man.
Yeah.
I would have bet everything that I had.
Yeah.
So that teaches me that you're never out of the fight. You're never, ever out of the fight. If you will give everything that you got, and if you can get everybody and whoever around you to believe in, the cause, go for it.
Even if you had to be the recipient of that loss, right?
Yeah. But like you learn it sometimes, they because I would love to be, the winner of that, but that taught me something. That taught me something. I can show my team that one of these days, and let them know that, like, this is why I am who I am. This is why I coach the way I coach, because it's a reason to my madness.
How long did it take you guys to recognize that? I'm sure it wasn't instant.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We had the blinds closed for 6 weeks. I don't even think I checked my mailbox. I didn't want to see a neighbor. I didn't want to go to the grocery store.
I would wake up. I would wake up and think it was like one of those like nightmares. Like, like something you just wake up from. You was like, I'm glad that was a dream, because I didn't want that one. That was one of the ones that was just like, I kept waking up and it was the real deal.
What I noticed with you though is it was like, he's really good about doing this in his life with other things too. Is like he takes his time to like feel what he feels, and then it's like, all right, that's enough. We got to move forward. So I really noticed, like I said, we spent 6 weeks. We spent the rest of February and all of March feeling sorry for ourselves. But when it came time to start preparing for that next season, and you were back in the facility, which you never left the facility, but you were back with your teammates and you were building for the next thing. It was like, that was horrible, but I learned from it, and now we're gonna go do better this year. So it wasn't too long.
Yeah, just being like an athlete, man, you learn that life sometimes you weigh more on the bad stuff than the good stuff. Is because, like, what would I have done if we would have won that game? I would have celebrated for a week, and then I'd be like, all right, back to it.
Now what?
So it's like a win and a loss don't tell me exactly who I am, because sometimes, you can do some bad stuff and win, and sometimes you can do some great stuff and lose. So it's like, I don't think that always signifies.
The result isn't like the whole picture.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to the identity thing too, what you guys both said about identity. If your identity is in football, then that's going to crush you forever. Yeah. But if your identity isn't something bigger, then you're going to be able to take the loss, learn from it, and still know that Christ is who he is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you here, last question. I love this conversation. This has been great. We ask this to all of our guests here on the show. I don't know if you guys have a question that you ask all of your guests or will ask all of your guests, but we do that here at Sports Spectrum. What is the Lord showing you and teaching you right now? We're in a pandemic. We're in a quarantine. You're about to have your third child. Life is whatever it is for all of us. So what is God showing you and teaching you right now? We'll go ladies first here. Grace, what's the Lord showing you right now?
That I can do hard things with him. And this whole pregnancy from being, I was hospitalized in the beginning with hyperemesis. I was so sick. It was the start of football season. I had 2 young babies at home. And then I had like 6 weeks where I felt really good. And then it was like it just started to begin again. And so it's like, that's not my own strength by any means, because I would have given up months ago, and been in the tank. And it's been the opposite. Have I been frustrated? Has it been a hard journey for me? Absolutely. But like, I've done it and I've grown through it. And I think as long as I'm willing to ask for that help and ask for that guidance, it will always be there for me. I just have to ask for it. And that's hard, a woman. And it's hard as someone that wants to do it all and be it all. It's not always the easiest thing in the world to ask for help, but like, that's part of what he's there for. And you just have to ask for it.
That's well said. Ricardo?
I think God is just showing me to just believe, really to just like believe in him and believe that, I don't know, like, because like I'm a big control person. I like to control most of the things that, go on. This is an athlete, you want to be in control. I'm always driving a car and stuff like that because like I want to be the one behind the wheel. That's why I don't like flying planes.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to like a year like this, it was no way to ever plan.
You can't. Yeah.
You couldn't plan for this. It's like, and it's just good to show that like the foundation and the stuff that I know I have been following and we have been following, through like the young life that we have lived, like the foundation is strong. And, he's just showing me that, he's already showed me from where he's brought me from to here, like it ain't much more, proven that he needs to do to me. It's just really just
your turn.
Yeah, just keep sharpening the relationship and just keep showing him that,
you believe.
I do.
Yeah.
That's good. Ricardo and Grace Allen. Ricardo, the Atlanta Falcons defensive back. Grace, about to become a mom of 3. We appreciate you guys. Again, that podcast, All In with the Allens, is available now. Make sure you go download, subscribe, and listen. Really appreciate you guys. This has been great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Many thanks to Ricardo and Grace Allen for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. They're awesome. They really are. And they got a great story. Glad that they joined us and shared it here on the show. You can check them out. If you search Ricardo Allen or Grace Allen on Instagram, you will find them. Give them a follow there. And then check out their podcast, All In with the Allens, available everywhere podcasts are found, and wish them nothing but the best, including a congratulations being in order for Ricardo and Grace on the birth of their new baby, now having a family of 5, going from a family of 4. They're great people. Appreciate them sharing their story here on Sports Spectrum. We also appreciate our sponsors, Ronald Blue Trust. If you have financial needs, questions going on right now, maybe in your life, they're the perfect place to turn to. We believe in Ronald Blue Trust, and I think you will too. Check them out at ronblue.com for all your financial planning questions, ronblue.com. Again, my name is Jason Romano. My email, jason@sportspectrum.com. Our website is sportspectrum.com, and definitely bookmark that website. That's a great place to go and check out all of our stories, articles on the intersection of sports and faith. You got a daily devotional there to start out each morning, and every single podcast can be found over at sportspectrum.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the show. We'll see you next time with a brand new episode right here on Sports Spectrum. Love you guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.